Okie dokie, time for me to sit uncomfortably in front of a camera and talk about a video. So in the last video I recorded, the SvelteKit crash course, I did mention that we'd be deploying it to production, which I didn't actually do. I just got to the end of the video. It was well over an hour long, so I cut that. But this video, I'm going to cover deploying that same project to production. So we're going to cover using SvelteKit adapters for the various different types of adapters you can use. So there's static, there's Vercel, there's Netlify, and I think there's Cloudflare workers. I think I'm just going to cover the two, which would be static and Vercel. I'm just going to go through a couple of different examples you can use to get your project onto the internet. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so if we start by taking a look at the Svelte documentation for adapters, we can see here before you deploy your SvelteKit app, you need to adapt it for your development target. As I said in the intro, there's several adapters already available. I'm going to be concentrating on the Vercel and the static one for now. So if we just take a look at the link for the static one here, open that up and go down to the README here. You see you install it as an npm install dev. The at next is important if you're going to be installing this before SvelteKit is out of public beta. And here you can see you add it to your Svelte config as an adapter, and these are the default options. So I'm just going to have it with just the parenthesis around it. So let's go on over to the terminal here. Let's install that as a dev dependency. Now that's installed, I can go over to VS Code and go on over to the Svelte config here and import the adapter and add it to the config object here. I'm just going to have the defaults in there. Hit save. Now I should be able to build this. So if I go on over to the terminal and run npm run build, and I've got an error here. This is because there's no environment variables being added to the build command. So if I go back on over to VS Code here and go to the package.json, you might recall from the crash course, we use env cmd here to load up the environment variables. Let's just take a look at the client we used it for. So in here, we're using process.env rather than the right underscore variables. So I'm going to need to go over to the package.json here and just copy this env command, env cmd for both the build and the preview. Let's hit save and go back over to the terminal and run that command again. Now that's done, if I go back over to VS Code again, there's a build folder with the static output of the project. So one quick way to test that this is up and running would be to use Netlify. So if I go on over to our browser tab here and go to Netlify and log in, and I use GitHub, so I'm going to authenticate with GitHub. And let's make this a bit bigger. If I go over to sites here and scroll down, there's this drop zone where you can deploy your site without connecting to Git. So this is a good way to validate the build is working. So if I go over to my project, on the build folder in VS Code, you can right click and say reveal in Explorer. And that'll open up my Windows File Explorer here. Let's go back on over to Netlify and drag that build folder in here, just drop it in. And it takes me to that project. And it's built already. So let's just click on this, go to Preview Deploy. And here's the app. Make that a bit bigger. And it's still got the same functionality. We can navigate around the pages here. Pick out a darker theme because that is bright. And that's it for building it statically. One other thing I'm going to do is just quickly demonstrate the Vercel adapter as well. So let's go back on over to my project here. In my terminal, I'm going to uninstall this. And I'm going to install the Vercel one. And while that's installing, I'm going to hop over to my Svelte config file in VS Code here and change adapter static to adapter Vercel. Hit save, and that's the configuration done for that. I have the Vercel CLI installed, which allows you to push your local project up to Vercel without connecting it to Git, much like with Netlify. So let's just find the Vercel CLI. If you go to vercel.com/CLI, you can install it as a global npm package. And then all you have to do from your terminal is just type in Vercel, and it will deploy the project from the current directory to Vercel. Let's go and do that now. Let's say Vercel. Now I'm just going to select the defaults for all of these. So yes to set up and deploy. I'm going to use my personal account. No to link to existing project. Use the current project name. I'm going to go from the root directory. No to overriding the settings. And that's it. So if I go over to Vercel now, let's close that Netlify example. I'm going to Vercel. And here you can see it is building. So if I click in this, and you can see down here it's building. But this is going to fail because there's no environment variables configured yet. So if I just go over to Sparkle's blog here, and in the settings, in environment variables, I can add in my environment variable here. So it's the GraphQL endpoint. Paste that in there, and the value is this endpoint here. Copy that and paste that in there. So now that's configured, I can deploy it again. So if I just go back on over to deployments here and quickly click on this and visit the site, you'll see that it's broken because there's no environment variable just yet. So I'm going to go back on over to the deployments here. We've just got the one at the moment. And hit Vercel again. Just for reference, this can be shortened to VC instead of Vercel. And then we hop on over back to my Vercel deployments. You see this one's been queued up and it's ready to go. Let's just wait for this to build. Okay, now that's built, we can visit the site. Again, choose the themes and navigate around the site. Fantastic. Okay, so that's it for Vercel as well. But in both of those examples there, it's very much a manual process. So what I'm going to do now is connect GitHub to the Vercel project and also to the Netlify project and deploy it via Git to both of them. So to do that, I'm going to need to create a new GitHub project. Let's go over to GitHub. And over to the right here, there's the plus icon. So I can say new repository, click on that, give my project a name, and scroll on down to create repository. Now that's created, GitHub will give me all the information I need to push my local project to GitHub. So I've got an existing project. I'm just going to use this. I'm going to copy this command here. Go on over to my terminal and paste that in. So if I do git remote verify now, I can see that I've got the origin set up on GitHub. Now I'm going to want to push the main branch. And then push it. So now it's on GitHub. If I go back on over to GitHub now and refresh this, got the project on GitHub. So now I can go over to Vercel here. I'm going to do this one first because I've already got the adapter configured for Vercel. I'll go back on over to the project here, and I've got the option to connect to a Git repository. So if I click on this and choose GitHub, and you can see it's the top one here, I can just say connect. And that's it, it's connected now. So any changes I make to the blog via a push to the main branch or via a PR, it will be built each time there is any changes in in GitHub. So a quick way to test that would be to make a change. So let's go on over to VS Code again, and I'll go over to my source control panel and just commit the changes I've made here. I'm going to be using conventional commits again. So let's say this is a new feature, no scope. Let's put in sparkles and hit enter on that. No longer description, no breaking changes. So from here in VS Code, if I open up the bar down the bottom here, you can see that I'm on the main branch and there are changes to sync. So I could click this from here and that will push up to GitHub. Then if I go on over to the Vercel dashboard and click on deployments, you'll see that this is just coming from me, my GitHub account. And it looks like Renovate's kicking in as well here with whatever Renovate wants to do. But this is the one from the push with the git commit message here. If I just click on this, we've got an error. Let's just see what this is. This seems to be looking for the env file, but that's not committed to Git. That's because in the package JSON, let's just close that bar at the bottom there, and going over to my package JSON file. So I'm going to use Control P and say package JSON. That's because I'm using env cmd here, and that's not available on Vercel. So I'm just going to change those scripts there and commit those. So save that and put this in as a bug fix. And we'll say bug. And we'll just do the defaults for the rest of that. And now if I go back on over to my Vercel dashboard and check out deployments again, maybe hit refresh here. Oh, I need to push. Let's go back on over to my terminal this time and do git push. A gut push. Git push. Right, so now if I go back on over to Vercel, maybe hit refresh again. This one is my commit message. It's building this time. So the build command shouldn't be looking for that env cmd, and this should just build. So let's just wait for this to build, check it out, and then we'll go take a look at Netlify. Okay, now that's built. Let's just check this out. This looks fine. Still got our theme switch going on. Go to Halloween again. And we can navigate around it. Fantastic. Okay, let's just close these ones down. That one. And we can leave that open for now. If you want to change your domain name, I think you can do that in the settings here. And over in the settings, there's domains. So this has just been picked for me, sparklesblog.vercel app. That's fine. If I wanted to change that, I could say edit and change it in here, but I'm just going to leave it as is. All right, so now let's do the same for Netlify using adapter static. So to use a Git integration with Netlify, there's a couple of files I need to add. Let's just go back on over to VS Code here. And let's go back on over to the config actually. And I want this as adapter static. And I'm going to need to swap that out in here. I'm going to want to uninstall this and install adapter static again. Let's just do this one. Okay, so then that's configured. I should, I need to commit this, but there's also an additional Netlify TOML file. So I'm just going to go to the Explorer here and right click, new file, Netlify TOML. And in here, there needs to be a build command. And I think it's just a tab, and the command is npm run build. And the publish directory is build. Save that. Now let's commit this to Git. It's going to use conventional commits again. New features, no scope, sparkles. I'm going to say use Netlify adapter. A default for the rest of those. So those are committed, but I haven't actually linked it up to Netlify yet. So if I go back and over to the project here and click on this, and go to site settings, and I thought I could connect this to a Git repository. I don't. So what I'm going to do is go back on over to my team here and say new site from Git, authenticate with GitHub here, and then pick out the project. So this is it here. I'm just going to select this. We're going to deploy the main branch. The base directory is the default. The publish directory is build, like we put in the TOML file. So for the advanced here, I can add in the variables I need from the project. So let's open up the env file here. Let's copy that variable name and put in the value. And there's no save, so I'm guessing that's it. If I say deploy site, and then scroll down a bit, we can watch this build. And I've got an error here because, again, I didn't push the changes to GitHub. So let's just fix that now. Not gut, Git Scott, Git push. So now those changes have gone up to GitHub. They should be picked up in the site here. So if I scroll down, we've already got it building again. So let's check this one out, wait for this to build. Okay, it looks like that succeeded this time. So let's check out the preview here. Let's try clicking around. All looks fine. Let's change the theme around. Okay, great. So any changes which are made to the project and pushed to GitHub will automatically be deployed and built on Netlify here. So if you did want to build to the 2, I don't think that's possible. So you need to choose one. But if we go back on to the project here, one other thing I'd like to take a look at quickly is if we scroll up to the top, much like with what we did with Vercel, you can change the project name. We go over to domain settings here. You can add your custom domain, so you can buy one from Netlify. You can use your own domain and configure the DNS settings in Netlify. Just for this, I'm going to go edit site name, and we can change this to Sparkles blog and save that. Now we've got the project name changed, and we've also got a nice readable domain. Okay, that's it for this one. Just one thing to note is that there are more options. So if you wanted the functionality of Vercel, but you wanted to put it on something like render, you could use the adapter node option here. and put it up to any service which will run like a node service for you. So render is one, maybe it's Heroku, I'm not sure, I haven't tried it, but there's other options as well. So one last thing I think I should highlight is, because this is static in Netlify, if any of this content changes here, so like say the about page gets removed, it won't be reflected on the site until it's built again, which is one of the joys and drawbacks of using Jamstack, is that everything gets pre-rendered. With Vercel, let's say, if you were to do it that way and remove a page and you didn't build it again, the hybrid nature of Vercel would let you change that. So let's just go and demonstrate that quickly. So let's go back on over to Vercel again. So in my package.json, I've got them, but I thought I had installed one. All right, looks like I've got them both installed now. So if I go over to the config here and say Vercel, and I can leave the Netlify toml file here. Let's go back over to conventional commits. Let's say alt. Use Vercel adapter. It's going to hit the defaults for the rest, and I'm just going to use VS Code here to push those changes. So if I go back on over to my Vercel dashboard here, and deployments, that one is building. So I'll wait for this to build, and then I'll quickly go over the advantages of using Vercel in like a node environment against using it in like a pre-rendered static environment. So let's just wait for this to build. Okay, now that's built, we can go check out the URL here. And if we go on over to the About page, let's do FAQ. And I go on over to my Graph CMS project, which I don't have open, so let's just open it up quickly. There's this one. And I go on over to the content and the pages and the FAQ page. Let's highlight that and let's just say unpublish. That's in draft now. If I go back on over to my Vercel project and hit refresh here, we can see that I've got a 404 because the FAQ doesn't exist, and that's updated with a refresh there. That's it for this one. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.